Chapter 7. High-Level Chachi. Prepare for the big event. Last time on Tea Dojo at Football State, Marcus and Damien took the long-anticipated Tea Practitioner's exam. The exam was a strenuous 4-hour exam with a written and brewing portion. To make matters worse, some of the questions were deliberately impossible, and the new brews had to use their Chachi to steal answers off the answer key. Damien tricked Jin into lending him strength during the brewing portion by containing him in a new ability Rick had taught him. Marcus finally discovered his signature Chachi, Shield Chachi, which he used to save his hand from being scalded. Despite the intensity of the exam, all of the 8 practitioners managed to pass and finally join as full-fledged members. Yo, it's the first master class and it's coming in fast. Gotta learn tea and you can't be crass. Damien freestyled along to a beat provided by Marcus, who quickly stopped at the end of that rhyme. You can't be crass, he asked. You're awful at freestyling. The two approached the Old English building from its side door and made their way down into the hallway towards the stairs. It was 5 p.m. on a Friday. They had just finished their classes and were on their way to their very first Tea Dojo meeting as fully fledged exam-passing members. Damien stuck his tongue out and laughed. Okay, if you're so good at it then, why don't you go for it? Damien dropped a beat, though with far less confidence. Marcus nodded his head as he went down the stairs. What kind of tea will we be rockin' with? Will it be a pu'er, red, white, or green? Regardless of which one, you know it's gonna be mean. A faint apparition of Jin, the ghostly tea spirit infesting Damien's soul, appeared right outside him, glaring at Marcus. This caused him to jump a little.
Your freestyle is about as trash as your brew. You better shut your trap before I make you.
Marcus nodded as Jin disappeared back into nothingness. Word, okay. The Tea Damien hates it when we spit bars. Noted, he said. I don't like how he started popping out like that lately. You know I've caught him staring at us when we're asleep. Damien threw his hands behind his head as they made it to the door of the dojo. Rick says it's fine. As long as I don't drink alcohol or willingly let him take control, he can't come out on his own. What did I say was fine? Rick asked, as he set out Gaiwans in front of everyone who had arrived. You know, tea demons popping out of you and rapping for no reason. Interesting, he said. Don't remember saying that, but please take your seats. Damien sat next to Gary and Marcus, who, as luck would have it, took the last seat next to Danielle. He turned to see her covered in bandages and other various scratches, as well as part of her hair erratically cut short. Marcus sighed and brought his hand to his chin. Let me guess, after your econ class, a football player accidentally pushed you into the fountain and someone just happened to release hungry piranhas in there moments before that tried to tear you to shreds. Danielle sighed. Okay, wise guy. I know the video's going viral on social media right now. No need to act so smug. She turned away from him and his eyes widened. Marcus looked at his hands in shocked confusion. He turned to Damien and gestured at his neck. Damien shook his head to indicate there was no Chachi used for that miraculous guess. I wouldn't give yourself too much credit, he said. The only difference from my guess was going to be I was going to say it was a hockey player who pushed her in. All right, everyone, quiet down, Rick said. He had finally finished passing out the wares. He stood up in front of the long table to speak to everyone. Congratulations again on becoming fully fledged tea practitioners. Today, we begin our first master class. You are past the point of being trainees, and now we expect you to conduct yourself with the skill and expertise the dojo is known for. The Tea Robert event is only a few weeks away, and if he even for a minute suspects our standard of quality is slipping, he may choose to never visit us again. Feels like an overreaction to me, Marcus muttered. Damien was too engrossed in staring at his setup in front of him to notice. He sheepishly raised his hand. Yes, Damien? I don't mean to be snippy, but did you forget to give us each a gongdao bei in a box? The cup of fairness, the pitcher that allowed the brewers to equally distribute tea into cups, and the wooden boxes with slits that caught any misplaced drops of tea were noticeably missing. The green practitioners were only given a porcelain gaiwan and several porcelain cups, enough for everyone in the room. Several others in the room took note of this, but others seemed to have already noticed and just stayed quiet about it. Not a mistake, semi-new brew, Abby said. Gone are the days of wooden boxes and pitchers. From now on, you brew directly from gaiwan to cup, and those mats underneath, your chabu, well, there's no way to hide any spills now. Plus, don't they just look a little better too? You've each been given a lowly oxidized low-roast oolong for the mountain of Alishan today, Jack added. It's a little nicer than some of the tea you've been allowed to practice on to date, so enjoy it. However, it comes with its own challenge. Today we're going to see if you can brew it in a timely manner, without smelling it. Good grief, Marcus said. Feels like the rug's being pulled out from us. I thought all these trials would end with the exam. Enough chatter about it. Let's get those kettles going and see what you can do. Rick went over and handed one of the kettles to Gary at one end of the table. Damien watched as Jack went over to give a kettle to Catherine at the other end. He stared confused as the two seemed to longingly gaze at each other for an extended duration of time before he finally saw Jack let go of the kettle. He felt the ghostly tapping of gin on his shoulder.
Pay attention to your neighbor. He's doing something interesting.
Damien turned his attention to Gary. Rather than pour in a circular motion, Gary was funneling the water all in one point in the gaiwan. Damien squinted and nudged Marcus. Hey, look at what he's doing, Damien said, whispering. Why is he doing that? We were always taught to pour in a circle. Marcus watched. I guess he figured we were taught a bunch of other things that were unnecessary now. I think I got it. Look at the way his leaves are moving around. They're swirling around in his gaiwan. Damien's eyes lit up. Yeah, it's like a toilet flushing. Yeah, don't say that. But yeah, they're moving around. I bet that helps open up those bald leaves for maximum flavor extraction. That's cool. I'm going to try it too. Damien received the kettle and did the same thing. Marcus did as well, right after him. Now came the tricky part. Both of them put their lids fully on the gaiwan to keep any aroma from escaping. They looked to one another. Damien tried to use his premonition chachi to detect who might be onto something, but there was too much noise for him to parse through. Marcus nudged him and pointed over to Natalie. See what she's doing? He asked. She's got her hand right next to it. I bet there's something to that. Natalie hummed quietly to herself, just beaming, smiling, and generally seeming to enjoy being around. Damien studied her carefully. She's feeling how hot it is. You think so? Marcus asked. Must be. Or at least I'm going to try. They both brought their hands to the sides of their gaiwans, not close enough to touch, but just close enough to feel the heat as it radiated off them. Damien could swear there was almost a crescendo, and that the heat was starting to dissipate. He got ready to grab it and decant. Are you sure about that? Jin whispered in his head. Damien paused. He was not. He continued feeling the tea, and to his surprise, it almost seemed to radiate heat like a wave, going up and down. He drew an analog from this to when he used to smell the tea. He had learned to rarely go on the first big rush of aroma, and rather to wait for the second one to come by, and then even longer on the later brews. He hardly had time to ponder how Jin's doubt in himself improved him when he went to decant. Damien stared briefly, holding the gaiwan aloft. Marcus glanced at him, ready to do the same. Come on now, this part is easy, Marcus said. It's just like a snake draft. Marcus started pouring into his cups at one end of his setup, going all the way down, filling them about halfway each way. Then, on the last one, he filled it up all the way and proceeded to work his way back in the other direction, finishing the others. He scattered any lingering drips throughout the remaining cups. In the process, only a few stray drips made it onto the mat. Damien thought easy to see, easy to do, but when he went to pour, his lid was cracked wider than he thought, and immediately lost a bunch. Panic set in, and by the time he was done snaking between the cups, they were only roughly half full. Rick walked by and shook his head at him. Well, we'll have to ask the chabu how it tasted. Damien grumbled to himself. He heard Jin cackling in the back of his mind.
Look at you! Unfit to call yourself a tea practitioner. Why do you bother? Surrender your earthly body and become someone who deserves the oxygen you breathe.
Marcus tasted his tea and seemed pretty satisfied with himself. Jack, Rick, and Abby all seemed to confer, and they each brought something out to the center table. They placed 3 teapots. One was an almost crimson red, like the color of blood. Another was a dark brownish, with almost a purple hue, resembling old tree bark. The last one was familiar. It was a tan teapot, almost yellow, like the sands of the desert. Marcus's eyes lit up. Hey, wait, I remember that one. Back in the dining hall, Jack had wielded the sand-colored teapot to absolutely obliterate Jeremy, a former member. He remembered seeing more chachi surging from Jack than he had ever recalled previously. Damien looked over the teapots. Their very presence almost seemed to make his hair on his neck stand, and they all seemed to just faintly glow with tea aura. Each one of them was not much bigger in size than Marcus's hand, and there was no elaborate design. Each one looked smooth as silk, a round body, with a short spout and thin round handle. A circular lid with a little round bump on top completed the wear. These are what we call yixing teapots, Abby said. They are made entirely of a special kind of clay called yixing, found in the province of Jiangsu. Authentic ones are valued for their heat retention properties, and the way the clay absorbs flavor compounds over multiple brews. In this way, yixing teapots can become especially attuned to brewing one type of tea that complements their clay. This red one is called Zusha, the purple is called Zisha, and then this beige one is called Dwani, Jack said. There's no chance when you're brewing that you'll be able to smell the tea from the pot, so it was important we got you over that hurdle. Now, Rick said, we'll each give you a turn on one of these to see how you do. Jack brought the Dwani over to Gary, Marcus, and Damien. Now, this teapot I have seasoned over the years with a green tea, a particular kind, Longjing. Jack showed them the leaves. Unlike the slightly furrowed leaves they were used to seeing, these leaves were like the tips of blades of grass. They were a vibrant green color. Jack handed them to Gary. By now, I'm sure you're starting to realize that we've given you a lot of rules of thumb to follow as new brews, but the wider world of tea is not so simple, and you will learn this in time. But I'll give you this one tip for free. High-quality Longjing is not a fragile tea, like other green teas. You don't need to cool your water before brewing. Jack set the teapot in a shallow ceramic bowl in front of Gary. He set the tea down in a small ceramic holder. He waited for the kettle to boil, and then brought it in front of them on a wooden block. He gestured for Gary to begin. Now, Yixing is fragile and absorbs heat, so when you preheat, even when you brew, it's advisable to pour water around the outside of the pot, remove the lid, and then pour it in, so that the heat evenly distributes and doesn't crack the clay when it expands. Gary did as he said. Already as he did this, just from the motion of preheating the wares, Gary started to glow with chachi. Damien's face lit up with a realization. Hey, Gary, he said. Your signature chachi lets you talk to pottery and ceramics. What is this teapot saying as you prepare it for brewing? Gary nodded. Well, it's screaming. It's screaming, ah, this is so hot. Ah, this is so dang hot. Damien frowned. Oh, I guess I never thought about it, but it probably actually hurts to have hot boiling water poured on you. Does that mean the teapots hate brewing tea? Gary grimaced. Not exactly. I don't know how else to say this, but they're kind of into it. Marcus's eyes narrowed. Do pieces of pottery often share their sensual desires and interests with you? More often than you might think. They're often imbued with whatever feelings the creator was having at the moment of creating them, which, again, that kind of feeling comes up more often than you might think. Damien turned to Marcus. Dude, that piece of pottery from the movie Ghost must be an absolute freak. Marcus threw his hands up. How on earth is that the first place your mind goes to? Jack shushed the two of them to let Gary concentrate. Once he warmed up the outside, he preheated the inside with hot water and poured it out into each of the cups. Marcus carefully watched as he snaked back and forth between the cups. He could tell that Gary was using this to get a sense of what halfway full would look like when he actually went to brew. When he brewed and served the tea, it was a gentle and refreshing flavor. There was an almost buttery mouthfeel as it slid across the tongue. The sharper edges of the tea felt almost shaved off by the Dwani clay, and the herbaceous taste made it inherently relaxing. This was good for Marcus, who could feel his hands shake as he went to brew the tea next. He heated the outside again, and then poured onto the tea directly in the pot. Gary had moved the teapot effortlessly with his hand as he swiftly slid it through the air. Marcus had to fight his trembling joints. He took a deep breath. He harnessed the power of his shield chachi to reinforce his fingers. It was a little sloppy, some drips here and there, but overall, he had brewed it beautifully, just about every bit as well as Gary. Then there was Damien. When Damien lifted the teapot after preheating it and filling it, he felt his fingers burn as he fought between feeling too hot and not holding it tight enough to stay steady. He could also not quite position his one finger over the lid to hold it still. Jack stared at him, sometimes looking like his arm might jut out to grab the valuable teapot out of Damien's hand. When all hope seemed lost as he was brewing, Damien hatched an idea. He brought his other hand up to keep his finger on the lid, so he could focus all his other hand's attention on holding the teapot comfortably. Damien thought he was awfully clever, but when he looked up, he realized he must look pretty silly doing this. Gary did his best to hide his expression, but he could tell he was every bit as exasperated as Jack and Marcus. The tea was okay. The Yixing clay could only cover so much of the jostling it did in unsteady hands, so some of the more astringent and acrid tastes seeped back into the brew. Damien just tried to focus in on himself, but inside him, the criticism was more intense.
That was truly terrible,
Jin said.
You bring shame on both of us the way you held that. I wouldn't be surprised if this so-called tea master who is coming forbids you to ever brew tea again if you pull something like that.
Marcus came over to pat Damien on the back. Cheer up, pal. Watch Danielle. I'm sure she's going to drop the teapot and start like a Rube Goldberg machine that somehow gets herself covered in spiders. Her eyebrows slightly perked up at this, as if trying to pretend to not hear it. She easily picked up the teapot, and channeling her telekinesis chachi, balanced it in her hand as she brewed near perfectly. When she was done, she stuck her tongue out at Marcus. He just shrugged. Sorry, pal. I guess you're the worst to have ever done it. Oh well. This is terrible, Damien said. Well, again, hey, at least for once we're actually spending the day learning about tea and brewing. I feel like any other day we would be getting attacked by a disgruntled former member or a demon. Suddenly, the lights flickered off. The room went completely dark, and there seemed to be absolutely no power to any of the outlets in the building. Of course, Marcus said. Everyone, disperse now, Rick yelled. There was a bit of panic as the entire dojo scrambled to get out of there. It was tough exactly to see where anyone was, and there was a lot of bumping into each other. Damien went to the closest staircase and up it. Marcus made his way down the other end of the hall, neither of which knew where the other was. Damien could spot the dim moonlight from one of the door windows. He went over to try to yank it open, but it was locked. His hair stood faintly on his neck. He turned around, grabbing something from his back pocket. Hey, back off, he said. Damien, is that you? Catherine asked. Hey, I'm here too, Natalie said shortly after. He could hear her wander over. He felt Catherine come closer too. Not so fast, he said. How do I know you're not some kind of illusion, Chachi? I'm getting an active feeling for it right now. It must be this, Catherine said. She rifled through her pocket. The only thing Damien could see clearly in the darkness was a faint tea aura around what she held in her hands. He recognized it instantly as one of the Yixing teapots. Oh, that's a good grab. We might need to defend ourselves. Nice job. Of course. I never go anywhere without a weapon. Are you some kind of... I snagged a bag of tea too. I think it's an oolong, Natalie said. Damien could hear it rustling in her hands. Well, call us the perfect team, he said, pulling out what he had in his back pocket. I started carrying around a thermos of hot water. I saw Abby was always doing it. The three huddled together. Damien preheated the teapot. Then Natalie threw in the leaves. Catherine was about to start to brew the tea, when suddenly Damien felt something tug at him. Everyone, down now! 3 powerful projectiles seemed to crash into the walls behind them after they ducked under them. Damien could tell it was some kind of Chachi attack, but in the dark he could not tell what. Catherine quickly brewed the tea. She surged with tea energy, almost instantly making her stand out in the otherwise complete darkness. Damien was about to call out to warn her, but he felt Natalie silently tug on his arm. She was dragging him away. He understood now that Catherine was trying to give them cover, and went with her. Damien watched as the mysterious figure in the darkness also lit up with Chachi around the same time. Another volley of blasts came out, but by the time they were nearby, Catherine had vanished using her teleportation Chachi. This momentarily would give them the upper hand. The assailant had no idea where they were in the dark, but they all knew just about where he or she was. Or so they thought. After a few moments of silence, a ray of Chachi beamed out like a flashlight and illuminated the room as it panned around searching for them. It found Damien first. He tensed up. The unknown agitator launched a volley of attacks in his direction, seemingly at full force. Damien smiled. From behind him, Natalie emerged with a cup of tea she had brewed after getting the teapot. She jumped right in front of the blast and drank the tea. Her body flared with tea energy as she used her reflection Chachi to send the attack right back at the opponent with the same force. Damien still could not see them, but heard them crash backwards onto the ground. Natalie was breathing heavy from taking the attack head-on and redirecting it. Nice one, he said. I'll try to take it from here. He grabbed the teapot from her and started brewing. He adjusted something real quick as the tea came into brew, and then set his thermos aside. He seemed to tap it twice and look to the side. He heard Jin cackle in his head. You're going to brew in the Yixing now to fight for all 3 of your lives. I hope you have an extra hand. Damien winked. I do, actually. He brought his hand to the tea. He felt in this complete and total darkness that he was just there alone with the tea, and it was the only thing he focused on. So when it came time for it to reach its peak, he felt it right away and began to pour out. He used a second hand with no hesitation, his shame taking a back seat to ensure he was doing right by his dojo comrades. He saw the enemy charge up another powerful attack. The power of their Chachi far exceeded his own, and he would burn up most of his energy using premonition to try to dodge their attack, leaving them back where they started. However, Damien had thought this through. Catherine, now! I read you, partner. As the blast came in his direction, Catherine grabbed him by the arm. She took a sip from the thermos, which was over half empty at this point. Damien, on the last brew, had slipped a couple of leaves into it before passing it to her. She channeled this Chachi to teleport him and her to be just in front of where the blast emanated from. Then, still having full use of his tea energy, Damien quickly stepped forward and swiped the Gaiwan out of the hands of the assailant before jumping backwards. Nice try, but it looks like you're out of... He paused. He could just vaguely make out something about the Gaiwan. He started to chuckle to himself. Well, would you look at that? Marcus was stumbling his way down the hallway of the basement. As he hit the wall at the end, he shortly heard two people after him do the same. "Hey, who's there?" he asked. "Where are you going?" "Where am I going?" Tanner asked. "I was following you." "Oh, and that's no good," Gary added, "because I was following you." "Looks like all three of us are just following each other into walls now." "Would seem that way. Just a couple of walls at the end of the halls." "Oh, I like that." "Will you please focus?" Marcus said. "Here, I swiped the Dwani that we were brewing in earlier. I still have half a cup of tea. Can anyone use it to get hot water?" Suddenly, a wave of chachi crashed against them, and they all immediately felt more fatigued than they were before. Marcus had felt this once, all the way back when a med had attacked them at the football game. That was impossible, though. He should have been incapacitated. Tanner slid over and grabbed the teacup. He drank it and doodled a little tow truck on the ground. The drawing sprung to life and drove off. After a few moments, it returned with one of the kettles from the dojo. "Hey, Tanner, did you hear about the tea truck driver who doesn't drink alcohol?" Gary asked. "No, Gary, I didn't." "Well, he doesn't want his truck to get teetotaled." They both laughed. They both immediately also got hit with another round of chachi. This time it made their legs cramp, just like Jeremy had done to Marcus and the group in a previous fight. "Two types of chachi abilities?" Marcus asked. "Come on, you two. I really need your heads in the game. This isn't a joke." "Fine, I was going to let this guy get a couple more rounds in, but I guess I'll wrap this up." Gary brewed the tea and effortlessly decanted it and drank it. He stared off into the distance. It was pitch black in the basement, except for the faint glow of their opponent and their teaware. Gary smiled. "Hey, Mr. Teapot, would you mind coming over here?" As if on its own, the teapot began rolling over in their direction. The assailant grabbed it and held it still, trying to avoid it getting away. However, out of nowhere, the mini truck returned and threatened to crash into their hand. The opponent let go of the teapot, and it almost finished rolling to them. However, this person took a big swig of tea from some other source, glowed bright with chachi, and suddenly Tanner and Gary were lifted through the air and pulled backwards and tossed down the hallway. "Was that?" Marcus stammered. He grabbed the teapot and continued to brew in it. He could hear the heavy footsteps of this deadly opponent approaching him. He brewed the tea, but realized all he could do now was shield himself to withstand the attack. He powered up shield chachi and was barraged with what looked like a series of astral fists. Each one whittled away at his tea energy, protecting him. He brewed again, desperate to try to keep himself from being destroyed. Tanner and Gary got back up, and Marcus could hear their footsteps charging down towards him again. The mysterious figure in the shadows, however, seemed to almost just slurp some tea and flick them back again with his wrist. Marcus groaned. He again surrounded himself in tea energy. He found himself flung through the air and was barely able to maintain his chachi as he crashed against the wall. Suddenly, as all hope seemed lost, the lights came back on. Rick, the mysterious assailant, stood awkward and dumbfounded, clearly not expecting this to have happened. "Already?" he asked. "Abby, what were you doing up there?" Marcus staggered to his feet. "What the heck? Why were you attacking us?" Gary and Tanner looked also confused. They were slow to get up as well, from being tossed around a good bit. "This was a combat drill," Rick said. "Now that you're full-fledged members, you need to be ready at any time to be attacked by a defector. I was testing your abilities. Gary and Tanner, you both did quite well. If you were up against any normal opponent, that teapot swipe you did would have been the end of it." Marcus frowned. "Hey, what about me? I participated too." "Right. Marcus, I kept this thing going for the whole duration because you did not lay a single attack on me. If you were on your own, how would you plan to defeat an enemy by just throwing up your shield?" Jack emerged from the dojo with Danielle and Taylor, who he had been challenging. Abby, Damien, Natalie, and Catherine stepped down the stairs to join everyone in the hallway. "How did it go for both of you?" Rick asked. "Abby, I wasn't exactly done yet. You didn't have to turn the power back on right away." She shrugged. Jack spoke first. "They both did pretty well. They were nimble. I never landed a direct hit. Though Danielle did sustain some damage after slipping on a banana peel that fell out of a knocked-over trash can." She just sighed and shook her head. "Sorry, Rick," Abby said. "These three got the jump on me, and Damien even snatched the Gaiwan right away from me. What my former new brew lacks in single-handed teapot ability, he makes up for in decisiveness and cleverness." Rick nodded in his direction and smiled. Damien beamed with pride, feeling much better than he had earlier. Marcus looked at the approval all three of them seemed to look at him with, and his head fell a little. After some time, Jack's stomach started to grumble. "I think that's enough for the first masterclass lesson," Jack said. "All that chachi use has me starving. Let's go get some dinner to celebrate." They all cheerily made their way up the steps and out of the English building, all except for Marcus, who stood there a few moments after. He clenched his fists tightly and scowled. Thank you so much for listening to this chapter of Tea Dojo at Football State. If you enjoyed, please rate the podcast, give it a like on YouTube, or share with someone else you think might also enjoy. You can stay up to date with Tea Dojo at Football State by following us on social media. There'll be D Squared stories on just about any of the major platforms. If you prefer reading to listening stories, also follow us on Substack, also D Squared Stories. Thanks again for listening, and I hope to have you listen again next week.